Hey everyone, Pastor Brad from Abundant Life here. Over the last year, we've all been affected by numerous events. Of course, the pandemic has been the biggest one, and we're going to be dealing with the negative fallout of this pandemic, I believe, for years to come. And a lot of people are suffering, not just health wise, but also mental health, economic health, and relational health has been severely strained, challenged, and affected by what is going on, not only with the pandemic, but also the responses to the pandemic. We've also seen in the last year tremendous upheaval in North America, especially when it comes to things like civil rights, racial inequality, economic disparity, injustices, and the entire political movement has been flipped on its head. A lot of people over the last year have asked me to respond to these different things. They're wondering why I haven't spoken more about it or done entire sermon series on these different elements and different issues that have been going on. And I can certainly appreciate what you're saying and what you're asking. There have been some reasons why I have not directly and regularly attacked these particular issues. The first, of course, has been the fact that this pandemic has affected my personal life, my family and friends, and my church. It has affected it in a great degree. I've been called to be a shepherd, and I have dedicated myself hundreds of hours and I've read thousands of pages to be able to deal with the pandemic, the regulations, and the effects of all of these things so that I can effectively lead my family and effectively lead this church family. It's been a very challenging time. I've dedicated a lot of time and energy to it, and I'm in obedience to God's call in my life because of it. But it does take my attention away from other things. I believe, though, that what God has called me to do here in the church is far more important than my opinion on certain things. The other thing has to do with the sheer complexity of these issues. The pandemic, the social unrest, the politics, the economics, all of this is extremely complex. There are many different facets and sides to this issue. And to try and understand and get a grasp of any of it, especially as things change and information and attitudes change almost daily, it's very hard to grasp a hold of something and say, okay, this is my opinion and this is where you should go. Thirdly, it has to do with the responses of people. Most people have attempted and done their very best to deal with all of these issues in a rational, biblical, and mature way. But there are many that have also taken extreme views. They've taken only one side and they've decided to throw everything they have into it. They become extremely vocal and even violent. No matter what side they may be taking, they become vocal and violent about their particular views. They've become the squeaky, or should I say, screechy wheel that gets all of the grease. And unfortunately, for the rest of us, frankly, I would say I've just given up trying to deal with that. Jesus describes this as, why do you throw your pearls to swine? And when people with extreme views on these particular issues who refuse to listen try and come to me and argue and debate, they don't want me to consider their point. They want me to convert to their point. They don't want to listen to me or consider other sides. They just want their side up front. And I'm feeling the poverty of throwing a lot of pearls to this type of behavior and these type of people. A lot of times when we look at the difficulties that are going through, we feel tremendous amount of fear. And that fear leads to anger. And we feel that we have to react against those who have wronged us, whether they have wronged us or caused a perceived wrong. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, we read this: do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Then in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 15, Paul takes up that exact same theme. So we have something from the New Testament and Old Testament that line up. He says, make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always strive to do what is good for each other, that is, between Christians, and for everyone else, whether they're believers in Jesus Christ or not. No matter what their particular background or feeling or views are, we are to do what is good for one another and for everyone else. And we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that is the greatest commandment. One of them, an expert of the law, tested Jesus with this question in Matthew 22, verse 35 to 40. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Who's your neighbor? According to the Bible, anyone who is not you. We have to be very careful how we respond to people and to situations. We become angry and we lash out and we cause problems and divisions. Yet in James 1 verse 20, this type of anger is described as our human anger. And this is what we read in the Bible. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So if we want to riot, we want to throw bottles and Molotov cocktails and rocks, if we want to storm government buildings and attempt to force people to take over, or if we want to try things like insulting one another, calling one another things like sheeples and covidiots and other things like that, that's a human anger response. And it goes directly against what God desires. And what saddens me is this type of anger is not only directed by non-believers against non-believers, or non-believers against believers in Jesus Christ, but it is extremely sad and sinful for Christians to be saying these things to other Christians. It's been said to me by supposed Christians. It's time to stop. Your human anger does not produce righteousness, God's righteousness. Now we're still left with the problems in this world. They're still there. Well, Jesus warned us about that in John 16, verse 33. He says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. We will have trouble in this world. Paul told Timothy, anyone who desires to live a righteous life will be persecuted. In 1 Peter, Peter talks that sometimes we suffer because it's God's will that we suffer. And we suffer, both in Romans and 1 Peter, that suffering is what gives us strong faith and trust in God and the ability to persevere and make wise decisions. And we're able to do that because Jesus has overcome our world. In Romans chapter 8, it says, all of creation is groaning, waiting for the day of the revelation of God's sons. That day is coming soon, but God will bring it about in his way and his time. Our way is almost always wrong. So let's pursue peace. Let's pursue unity in the Spirit, held together by the bond of love, agape love from God. Let's face the troubles of this world with the confidence that Jesus has overcome the world. This world is not our home. We have a home in heaven through faith in Jesus Christ. And that's the good news we need to be spreading. If you want to spend your time and effort and money on legal challenges, and you want to scream and yell on the internet about this conspiracy or that conspiracy or this political party or that leader or whatever, you can do that. But remember, the results will never be what God desires. Or you can give people true hope by proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ and living a holy life in an unholy world. We will always be different because this world is not our home. This world hates us because we do not belong to this world. We belong to Christ. And in this, we need to rejoice and base our hope. God bless you.